The Podcasting Dead is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Make sure to subscribe for more podcasts. And while you're at it, drop us a like. If you want to help support the channel and have access to extra content, secret contests, and more, make sure to search for us on Patreon. Patreon.com/thepodcastingdead.
It's time to get weird on a Wednesday, which happens to be the best day of the week to get weird. Unless you're just a freak like that. I'm Justin.
And I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead. And JP, we always dive into odd and bizarre things on Wednesday. Everything from the supernatural to crazy conspiracy theories. And I'm anxious to see what are we discussing today?
You tell me.
So what are we talking about?
I don't know. I've been... some people say that extensive methamphetamine use has effects on the hippocampus, which gives you a sort of a better... Basically, it lets you see things that are beyond the spectrum of sight, for normal people.
So what you're telling me is doing meth will allow you to see things previously unseen?
Yeah, things that cannot be seen by the normal human eye.
We're talking about like light spectrum?
Like shadow people, any number of paranormal phenomenon. Supposedly, it makes you more adept at interpreting these things, at seeing them.
Man, see, I can't. But see, they say that about DMT as well.
Well, DMT is a lot different.
Do you believe there's any truth to the meth thing?
Well, I think with meth, you just stay up so long that you start hallucinating and what have you. It was a child, I think 8 years old. They said he ingested some of his mother's meth and claimed he saw ghosts and that mutant spiders were crawling on him. So I think it's probably more of a hallucination thing, but I'm more than willing to do some trial runs and we can see.
I mean, I'd prefer for you. I mean, as your friend, I'd be happier with you not doing meth than I would with you doing meth. But then again, it is your life, and I can't control you.
Well, I'm not going to smoke or inject it. I'll only snort it if that makes you feel any better.
That's how innocent I am with drugs. People inject meth.
Yeah, oh yeah, man. Yeah,
really?
That's how you get a really bad off on it. Which I mean, smoking I think is probably just as addictive, and it definitely like messes up your throat, your teeth, your gums, and that's why a lot of meth heads you see with like their teeth are all gone. It's because they smoke it so much. But no, you can inject meth just like heroin.
I did not know that. It just has the
opposite effect. It just tunes you up instead of bringing you down.
Huh? Down.
And a lot of people, that's how they die, is because they mix the two, because they don't want to be here, and they don't want to be all tweaked. They want that nice middle ground.
What do they mix?
Meth, which that's what killed not with meth, but with coke and heroin. It's speedball, and it's where you inject a mixture of the two. That killed John Belushi. It killed Chris Farley. Speedballing, baby, and you can do the same thing. You can substitute the coke with the meth. And it's a beautiful thing.
Don't do drugs, kids. So, man, all right, going back on the DMT thing. We've talked about it, but it's been a while, and I find it fascinating. Not that I necessarily want to do DMT, but I want to talk about the DMT experience that people claim that you've not done DMT.
No, unfortunately not.
But you've read up a lot on it. You've listened a lot on it as far as people's experiences, and kind of a blast from the past here. So they claim, or they think, or theorize, however you want to word it, that DMT unlocks something in your brain that allows you to communicate with like otherworldly transdimensional beings.
Yeah, well, I mean, DMT is already naturally produced in our pineal gland, and so by ingesting it, because they say the DMT in our pineal gland is responsible for things like dreams and things like that. A lot of abstract thought.
Now, is that proven or is that a theory?
I'm pretty sure that's proven. Or is
it a hypothesis, I should say?
I don't. Well, I mean, the thing as far as like DMT influencing like producing dreams and stuff. Now, yeah, that they're still researching. But as far as DMT being produced in our pineal gland, they've proven that.
Science, bitch.
But I mean, that's why they say a lot of times people terminal cancer patients or whatever, man, they have a DMT experience and it eradicates their fear of death, because basically that's what DMT does. It transmits your consciousness. It's like a conduit transmitting it to wherever it's going after this place.
Wow. And which is interesting, because now, how is that affected? I mean, I know you just said cancer patients, but like, how is your pineal gland affected when you're dying? I mean, do you think it could be responsible for why people see things like dead relatives or, death or angels? I mean, do you think it could have any effect on why people see things as they come close to death?
Yeah, I mean, people talk about seeing a bright light and sometimes a tunnel and stuff like that, and people who have done DMT say that you're just launched into a world of lights and geometric figures and things like this. And so people think, a lot of people speculate and theorize that when you die, the pineal gland releases this DMT, and that's why you might start seeing stuff, and it's pretty much just ferrying you wherever you're going.
I was going to say, what if that connects to death? Like, what if that's the pineal gland, it releases and basically just permanently sends you on this journey, being your body is shutting down?
Yeah, that's the theory. Theory. It connects us to whatever dimension is beyond this one, or possibly where our consciousness originates. We're just kind of going back to that place.
And do you think that could tie into like past lives and such?
I think it's very possible.
So, if we are just a receiver, like this physical body, then our brain is just kind of like a receiver, and our consciousness is being broadcast from elsewhere. I guess, is it possible that we've been put in, our consciousness has been broadcasted multiple times throughout its existence?
I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility.
Or maybe that's why we have past life regression and stuff like that. Isn't that a term, past life regression?
That sounds correct.
I don't want to sound like I'm trying to sound fancy. I got my big fancy words.
Yeah.
But I think that's the term that I've heard before, past life regression. But the past lives thing has always fascinated me, man. I think of all the paranormal... Well, I don't even know if paranormal is the correct term to use for it, but for all of the mystical, mysterious mysteries, I just use mysterious mysteries, which I just could have made one word, just for all the mysteries of life. Oh, man, I need to drink more coffee. But for all the mysteries in life, I think that past lives has been the one that's fascinated me the most. And I know some big cases have been proven to be hoaxes, but, I mean, there are some cases, if you read... his last name's Moody. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head, but he wrote a book called Paranormal, and it's basically all about his study into near-death experiences, and it really kind of goes even more so into like past lives. Mm-hmm. Raymond Moody, perhaps. Really good book. I mean, I read it like 10, 11 years ago, but I just remember it was just hard to put down. I mean, you have to have, and I mean, this guy is not biased. He's kind of like the guy that works on the 411 cases and put all of that together. He tells you, like, he's not going to give you his opinion on whether or not he thinks past lives. All he's there to do in that book is to present you with his findings as a researcher, someone who's trying to stay in the middle as far as his beliefs, like not trying to rule it out, but not trying to push the agenda, just trying to, and I mean, they've had instances where people have, talked about their past lives. And then, I mean, especially too, with some of these kids, they're so young. I don't care if the parents are in on it or not. It is, I mean, unless your child has just got a natural born acting gift, some of these kids are so damn convincing, and they're so young. It's like it's hard to get a kid to act that well that young. I mean, we're talking like 3-year-olds that can take you to a part of the ocean and tell you that's where their plane went down when they were a fighter in World War II. And then lo and behold, there is a plane down in the bottom of that lake, so it's or in the bottom of that ocean. So there are some things that just are really hard to explain. So if there's some possibility of the connection between DMT and past lives, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and sometimes I wonder if stuff like that, past memories from our ancestors, almost, if it's like passed down through DNA, like certain behaviors are learned and others are just like innate, like your instinct to, like an infant's instinct to latch onto its mother's teat and stuff like that. Like you don't learn it. It's just something to do. I wonder if deep down, like embedded in our genetic code, if stuff like that like kind of makes its way, like a traumatic death or a lost love.
Wow,
things like that.
That is a brilliant thought. Holy crap, man!
It's wild to think.
That is. I mean, that's getting into like Assassin's Creed territory, and I know you never played Assassin's Creed, but for those unfamiliar with it, the whole premise of the game, at least the first three, well, all of them. But I've played up through Black Flag, and I hadn't really played much after that. But the whole premise of it is that they take DNA, like memories are stored in DNA, and like they use this machine to get Desmond is the main character of the first three, and they lay him in this machine, and through his DNA, he can relive memories from his ancestors, and they always have like a specific ancestor. Like you got Altair is the main character, is the other main character, the first one, and Desmond's long ancestor from back in the day, way back, back in the days of knights and stuff like that, and they can actually like watch this man's memories because of Desmond's DNA. And then Ezio Auditore, which is like his is back in like he's Italian and back in the Renaissance days and all of that, and like they can act. So that's basically what you're theorizing is that not only are memories possibly stored like in DNA, but for some people they can actually present themselves in the form of a memory. Like you can actually see the event.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea.
Without the use of a machine.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know if there's anything to it, but it does make you think. Because like I said, I mean, certain behaviors are stored in our genetic code, and we just know to do it, to flinch when you touch something hot, which I know that has to do with like central nervous system and stuff, but.
No, yeah, well, no, I mean, well, animals even. I mean, right, cats instinctively have a chase instinct where if you start running, something runs, they just can't help it. They have to chase it, like that's why I tell you when you're camping or hiking, you see a mountain lion, the last thing you want to do is to turn around and run because you trigger their chase instinct. And even if they don't necessarily want to kill you in that moment, they're now chasing you, trying to get you because you triggered something that they just naturally do.
Yeah, it's curious, and speaking of books, man, I just got one in from Amazon. I can't wait to delve into that for the next time that Julius is in here, because it's by, you've heard me mention my boy Graham Hancock a bunch of times, and it's basically how all these psychoactive drugs and elements found in nature basically inspired, the main religions like Christianity. There's actually another guy just wrote a book, and he's a colleague of Graham Hancock, and it's called I forget what it's called. I could look it up real quick, but it's basically saying how Christianity is based on this old Greek practice of going and basically eating of the forbidden fruit. It's basically something, the immortality key, the secret history of the religion with no name. And it's basically about these guys like Plato and Socrates, all these ancient philosophers. They would go and partake of this ritual, because you got to think like ancient Greeks and Romans, man. I mean, the afterlife was not something they looked forward to. I mean, you went to Hades, and I mean, it really wasn't much better than Earth. If anything, it was worse. And they would partake of whatever this stuff was, and it would like we were talking about before, alleviate any anxiety over death. And they say that that's kind of formed the basis for religions like Christianity, where the afterlife is something you're rewarded with, and that comes from this practice of them taking this stuff and alleviating any anxiety over death. So.
Speaking of books, have you read any of that book on giants you bought?
I have been picking that up some. I haven't had a lot of time to read. Even my comic backlog is getting high. But no, man, it's wild, some of these accounts, and I hate it, man. That a podcast we did a while back, I was talking about a story about the Smithsonian, like the Congress. Talking about how the Smithsonian did all this with the giant skeletons. That was apparently a fake story.
Was it?
But there's still a lot of accounts. I mean, take out the stuff about Congress, making the official statement or whatever. There's still a lot of accounts of the Smithsonian and a lot of other museums doing this kind of stuff. It's just that particular, super official account was not true.
Oh, so it was debunked.
Yeah, it was actually something like, it was almost like an Onion type story, but it got a lot of mainstream attention because dummies like me read it and was like, oh shit, that sounds super legit.
Well, at least you're man enough to admit you were wrong.
Yeah, but like I said, it is based on accounts of archaeologists and museums and institutions all over the country doing this. So
if giants existed, I wonder what their role was. You know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of people think they were a ruling class. A lot of people think that all these ancient monoliths, like Stonehenge and things like that, were built by these creatures. There's actually and a lot of it's cool, man, because some of the early colonists, man, would find these big stone structures, I guess most of which are gone today. But, I mean, a lot of them say predate, like most Native American tribes and stuff that lived on the North American continent. They think that there were giants, widespread across North America. Well, I mean, widespread across the whole world, but they just through selective breeding and stuff like this, they just kind of slowly just kind of faded out of the population.
Well, I mean, another interesting thing to note are the giant spheres, like those stone spheres that are perfectly rounded and they're huge and they're heavy and nobody understands how they were made. I mean, that's the cool thing. And it might be a very logical, non-giant related answer to it. But as of right now, there are lots of artifacts found that scientists have no idea who made them, why they made them, where they made them. So, I mean, it's not that I necessarily believe that giants ever existed, but I'm just saying there's still a lot that we don't know out there.
Yeah, man, they have copped to being subspecies of early humans that were basically like hobbits. And
that's fact, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you've got proof of one race of people to that extreme, I think it's just as likely that there was another race of humanoids on the other extreme, just super big and probably more intelligent,
I've read conflicting things on David and Goliath as well, on what was considered a giant back then, or that word might have been used kind of liberally just to describe a very tall guy, not a literal giant.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, if you were 6 foot tall, I mean, you think about it, that was a tall sumbitch.
You or I would be big boys back then. You sitting at I'm 6 foot even, and I think you're slightly taller than me. So what are you, 6'1"?
Maybe, I don't know.
Because I'm right at 6 foot, and you are slightly taller than me. Not by a lot, but a little bit.
Well, I mean, even forget about the Bible days, like when we were in that the old mansion place for that Christmas party. The hand railings and everything were lower because people were way shorter. Just back in the 1817 and 1800s.
What JP's referring to is the Berry Hill Mansion, which is located in Virginia. It's where our company decided to have their Christmas party. So company employees traveled far and wide.
Oh, yes.
And it's a really cool place. The party itself was not that fun, but JP and I and our buddy Aaron just grabbed ourselves some beer and decided I had been to this place many, many times. In fact, one of my friends used to work there, and I've actually talked about this place in a past podcast when we were talking about supernatural experiences and such. And this place is supposedly haunted. But I've spent a lot of time there. So I took Aaron and JP on a guided tour, if you will, and showed them around the mansion. And then in the main entrance, there is this double staircase that leads up. It's a beautiful setup. And when you go up that, someone our height, 6 foot, and hell, Aaron's probably a little bit taller than us, right?
Yeah, I think
he's got kind of short arms, but he is a tall guy.
That's true.
You kind of really have to reach down for the guardrail. It doesn't just naturally fall where your hand wants to sit because, and the reason for that, I was told by the, people that work there, is because people back then in the 1800s were shorter.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to Google it real quick because I don't want to tell you wrong, but I really think it was first erected in the 1700s. Let's see. Berry Hill Mansion history. But yeah, it was Okay, it was a 105-acre tract granted by the English crown in 1728 to William Byrd II, and was one of Virginia's largest and most prosperous plantations. And then it's been passed on and on and on, but it's been remodeled. My mom actually got to go on a tour and see it before they renovated it. Mm-hmm. And this was back when I was a kid, and for a while. I mean, because it's old, and so what I like about the way they renovated it is, though, they tried to renovate it in the same style.
Yeah.
They didn't try to update it per se. So when you walk into the main entrance, like, you're basically seeing it as they would have seen it. I mean, of course, the wallpaper's newer, and the guardrails may have refurbished or new wood, but it still looks and feels as it would have back in those days. And there's actually a cemetery out back you can go to where pretty much everybody in that family has been buried. Mm. But I took JP on a little guided tour through it, and what do you think? I thought it was cool.
Yeah, dude, I love stuff like that. I love any old structures, like Monticello, man. That's one of my favorite places to go to.
And it's cool because as you go throughout the mansion, you can see lots of indications that people were just smaller back then.
Yeah, dude, they were short.
Some doorways are shorter, some stairways are more narrow because people weren't quite as wide.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, like the nutrition wasn't as good. People just didn't get as big.
And people didn't have all that damn steroids and shit in their chicken.
Yeah.
A lot of contributing factors, I'm sure.
I wonder if that means that dudes' packages were a lot smaller. So if we went back in time, man, we'd be like freaking, swinging big guns for back then.
We'd be tall.
We'd have big old,
Speak for yourself. I appreciate you assuming I have a big ding-a-ling.
But I'm just saying, like, your size now, proportionately for the times, man, the chicks would be like, oh,
no, I'm very comfortable. So, yeah, maybe back then we would be.
We'd be like even, like we wouldn't just be average dudes. We'd be like Goliaths in the bedroom.
Which leads all the way back around. It comes around full circle to the fact that, back then, a giant, not trying to say giants didn't exist really, but at the same time, I'm a little skeptical on the giant thing. And so someone who stood maybe 6'5", I've got a buddy named Joey who's 6'8". Imagine he's 6'8", 260, 70 pounds.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could teleport him back to like the 1700s and just walk around like the average people. Like if he just rolled into that plantation, he would look like a freaking giant. Then go even further back than that and take him back to biblical times. He would probably be described in text as a giant.
It's very possible, yeah.
So something kind of against the giant thing is that, and that's the thing with the Bible too, man. I mean, you got to understand how much different terminology was back then. I mean, it's really in translating it. I know there's a lot of issues with translations, maybe changing up, one wrong word translated can change up the meaning of an entire verse. Or how it's interpreted.
And that's how we were taught in church when I was growing up. It was just like, now look, there's not giants like Jack and the Beanstalk. They were just, for their time, super tall people, which would probably be of average height today. Think of like a professional wrestler, like just big people, but for their time, they were considered giants, which I don't buy into that. I think there actually were a race of humanoids that were like, the
Bible says it was
10 plus feet tall, maybe more than that. I just
say the angels came down and had sex with the women and made the Nephilim. How do you say it?
Nephilim.
Yeah, and those were giants born of beast and not of beast, but of angel and people.
Well, a lot of people think the reason Sodom and Gomorrah were wiped from the face of the earth is because they were doing genetic experiments, splicing humans with animals and making all these weird creatures and stuff like that.
God said, hell no.
Well, whoever was in charge was just like, look, they're doing some weird stuff down there where this isn't authorized. And, if it's not authorized back then, you didn't get a nasty email. You just got obliterated.
So as everything's exploding around you, you're like, I take it they're shutting down our research.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, trying to interpret the Bible, man, is a very interesting thing when you look at translation. And,
you have to. I mean, what version of the Bible are you looking at?
But So I don't know about the Giants, but like getting back to the DMT thing, because we talked about a few weeks ago simulation theory, which if I'm going to believe any, and I don't know, much like JP, I don't know that I believe anything, but there are certain things I give a little bit more acknowledgement to, or I'm more keen to follow. I don't even know what the term I'm looking for is, but. If any of them, it'd probably be simulation theory. And it sounds crazy when you first hear of it. Dude, bro, we live in a simulation. And, it just sounds like something that you can easily laugh off and be like, okay, somebody's been watching, too much Rick and Morty or something. But, I mean, when you really stop and think about simulation and what simulation could mean and technology and, just the fact that in my mind right now, simulation theory is one of the few. Because there could be others out there, but one of the few that I know of that could almost, if not entirely, explain every weird thing in our existence. Everything from ghosts to demons to UFOs. I mean, it all could be past lives and, life after death and all of it could be explained away with simulation theory.
Exactly.
Years ago, I wanted to write a fictional book that explained everything, like everything responsible for every paranormal instance, from Sasquatch to UFOs to ghosts. And back then, I just didn't think about simulation theory.
Yeah, I guess it was. Well, I guess it was somewhat prevalent. I mean, we came up during the time of the Matrix movies, but I don't think it was really regarded as something that could actually be happening, as much so as it is now.
Wasn't taken as serious as it is now.
Yeah.
I watched an interesting video yesterday or last night on the channel Slapped Ham, which is on YouTube, and it was accounts of people that have been to hell.
Oh.
And one girl said that Michael Jackson was there.
Oh, no.
And it's weird why my brain's thinking of this. It's just like, Eddie Van Halen died yesterday. Mm-hmm. Well, I work, at a classic rock station. So, of course, even as we're speaking, I'm loading Van Halen tracks throughout the day. And, Eddie Van Halen actually was an uncredited piece of work, but he's the one who actually recorded and wrote the guitar for Michael Jackson's Beat It. Mm-hmm. So that's probably why this is on my mind. But she said that Michael Jackson was in hell and he was on fire and the demons were surrounding him and beating him and making him sing and dance for him, which is a terrible, terrible thought. But
I mean, it sounds a lot like what his dad did to him when he was growing up. He's just taken back to childhood.
Yeah, his dad was freaking, I never thought about that. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't hell be part of hell? Hell is just eternal torment. So, I mean, even that torment probably isn't limited to reliving past trauma.
Yeah, but it's just crazy. The torment his father put him through was probably what made him such a weirdo.
Oh, it absolutely was.
What sent him to hell. So, I mean, it's like he had no chance to win.
Yeah, and that's what I don't. That's parts of religion that I struggle with, because I remember one time, and I'll never forget it. And we won't get into a large religious discussion here because we're not here to tell you religion is or isn't real. But just speaking from my own experience, I'll never forget a preacher in a sermon. I remember him saying this sentence. He said, "There's a lot of good people burning in hell," and I remember thinking, what? And, his argument is that you can be the nicest person in the world. You can spend your life helping others. You can help cure diseases and give constantly and just devote your life to helping your fellow man. But if you just refuse to, if you just don't believe in God, something who's not, and it's shown himself. And so, and I get some people, but, he shows himself every day. I mean, like literally just like, boom, pop in the sky and be like, hey guys, just a reminder, I'm God, I'm here. I know that I hadn't popped up in about 2,000 years, but just wanted to let you know, believe in me or you're going to burn in hell. Okay, bye. But like, just remember being a kid thinking, well, that's terrible.
Yeah,
I mean, like, what? I mean, I would think a kind and loving God would be like, look, I know you didn't believe in me, but I also know that, your accounts of me were written by men thousands of years ago, and I get it. You've spent your life doing nothing but helping others, and you've earned a seat here in heaven. Like, people try to explain it to me, but like in my mind, you would never rationalize a loving God as someone who could cast a good person into hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Like that was probably what started pulling me away from religion more than anything.
Yeah, I just like you, I went to a Southern Baptist church, and I remember one year they were raising money to send missionaries to China. It was just like you said, they were like, a lot of these people in China have never heard the word of Christ, which means they're automatically going to hell. And I'm just like, huh? And it hit me even harder, man. Like I've told you, my dad died when I was 10 years old. He was not a Christian, and I was just like, so shit. My dad seemed like a all right guy to me, but he's in hell now, so that sucks. But even like this is like what they base that stuff on in the Bible. This is Ephesians. Chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. So they're basically just saying none of the good stuff you do in life is why you're going to heaven. It's because of faith in God. So,
and like for me as a kid, I struggled with that so much because I was like, okay, so wait, so you have a God who's a loving and forgiving God, and he looks at two different people, a guy who's been a child molesting murderer his entire life, but accepted Christ right before he died, and then a guy who was, I'm not going to say like it's different if you're just out there being a staunch atheist, but I mean, let's just say this guy was an atheist or agnostic, just really kept to himself, really didn't believe in any kind of religion, but made a lot of money in his life and spent his life, building hospitals for children and doing mission trips overseas, and not mission as in the like Christian mission, but like, going over there helping build homes and educate and feed, and just this amazing human being whose impact on this world is seen very rarely. And you're going to look at those two and go, you know what, Tommy? I know you raped a bunch of kids and murdered people, but you did accept me towards the end of your life. So get on in here, you murderous bastard. And as for you, I mean, yeah, you helped cure diseases. And yes, you did spend your entire life doing things for others. And you're probably one of the most selfless people I've ever had stand before me. But you didn't accept me. So, bye-bye. Like I just, as a kid, and I mean, and I'm not trying to offend anyone who's Christian. If you're Christian, I'm sure you can rectify that in your own way or justify that. But I just, as a kid, that's where I started pulling away from religion, because I was like, that's bullshit. Like, It's one thing if he stands before you and then denies you, like, I don't want to be in heaven. Screw you, God. Then, okay, well, you were a good person, but you're kind of being a dick right now. So, but I mean, like, in a world we exist in so many different works of fiction, and we're surrounded by so many other religions that are so certain that their religion's the right religion. It blew my mind to think that a loving creator would be so, quick to just throw you into a lake of fire and be done with you. Yeah. I don't know. And I'm sure that's certainly sealed my place in hell. But I mean, maybe. I mean, God, if God's real, he made us with these complicated minds and these thoughts, and so I mean, I can't help where my mind goes when I'm sitting in church hearing this stuff.
Yeah, that's why you're not supposed to eat from the tree of knowledge, man. You're supposed to just do what the gardener tells you, and not wonder, not let your mind be strayed with thoughts and temptations. But it's been explained to me by some super duper like Christian people that it's not enough to just say you're Christian, as far as people just, on their deathbed claiming salvation, and really awful people who, go to church and say they're Christian. They say that your faith should be reflected in your life. If you truly believe, that'll be reflected in your actions. So it's basically a matter of, you can't just talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And if you really do believe, and God knows if you really believe, if you're just whistling Dixie, that'll be reflected in your actions. And that's not to say that you're not going to falter and sin and do the wrong thing, but
that was beautiful, JP.
I've got some, Liberty University is right up the road from us. I got a few friends that ended up going there and just really know their stuff, man. They're hard to argue down. I can tell you that much.
But still, though, that's just my thing, though. Is that's what I would say. But so you're telling me, I remember here when like that sentence shouldn't exist. Lots of good people are burning in hell. I'm like, what? That just doesn't seem fair to me. You know, it's, and I don't know. And I know Christianity is complicated. You've got the Old Testament, and then the New Testament kind of does away with the Old Testament because and some people theorize that they're two different gods.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard talk that the Old Testament God was a completely different, wrathful, vengeful, just angry God, whereas the New Testament God, which I guess we should hope if there's two, one of them's more powerful than the other, came in and was like, you know, hey, sorry about what I said and did all last time. I always, and I've already talked about it before, so I won't go too long into it, but I always talk about, was it Job, the farmer that, you know, God and the devil more or less had a wager, and it was he only worships you because you bless him so much. Right. And then God's like, yeah, okay, do whatever you want to him. Don't hurt him, but do whatever you want to him. He'll still worship me. And so like his wife and kids die, and his farm, like, the crops quit growing, and this guy's life just becomes absolute fucking hell for the amusement of God and the devil. And then finally it's like, and even Julius said this, and I'm like, but you have kids, so let's think about it. So what Julius and most people say is, and then God rewarded him. Because I think Julius, even in that podcast, God and Ghost, was like, but then what did God do next? And I'm like, he rewarded him tenfold, but he still murdered his children. He let his children die. Yeah. Like, I have a daughter, and she is an absolute delight. I love my daughter. I never knew love like that existed until I had a daughter. And she's not exchangeable. Like, okay, to prove a point, I'm going to take your child. But don't worry, you'll have 5 more.
Number one, you don't want that many kids to begin with.
Right. No, I want the one I have, and that's it. But it's like, that's the way you refer to comic books. Look, I'm going to destroy this first issue of The Walking Dead. However, I'm going to give you 5 more if you let me destroy this one. Okay, cool. It's an inanimate object. You know, and I'm like, that doesn't seem fair to me. But
yeah, from what I remember, South Park did a really good episode on that.
Oh, yeah.
On the Job story, yeah.
South Park does a good job on everything. But again, and it's not trying to rip. It's just whenever you're talking about, you know, existential conversations, just the meaning of his existence and stuff like that, I mean, you can't not go into religion.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
But again, that's not to, you know, I never want to. I've always said that's my thing, though. I don't know what I consider myself religious-wise. I'm definitely not like hardcore. There's nothing. I don't know. Like, that's my thing. I just don't know. However, I never want to be the guy trying to tell you to stop believing what you believe. So at the end of all of that I just said, you know, if you're religious and it brings you peace and happiness, then be religious. Don't let my doubts affect your faith, you know, because I'm not going to lie, like, as much as Christians sometimes catch a bad rep, I've met lots of really good Christians in my life, like people that are religious and they're not in your face with it and they're not trying to shove it down your throat, but they are just living like good, you know, like Clarksville has that Summerfest every year, which for some stupid reason they have it in the middle of July when it's the hottest it's going to frickin' be, and you're on pavement all day, and it's miserable. It's a fun event, but you're miserable because you're so hot. And I just remember this church being open, going, you know, giving people free water and letting you use the restrooms without any kind of, you know, like, hey, if you sit through a 10-minute sermon, we'll give you
like selling timeshares.
And I mean, they were there to talk to if you were interested in coming to their church. But I mean, you could literally walk in and they would say, hey, would you like some water or go to the restroom? And then they would, you know, restrooms that way. And before you leave, make sure you grab yourself a water. And then you could just go pee, grab your water, and be gone. They wouldn't taunt you at all. And I was like, so there have been lots of, you know, so while it sounds like I'm a naysayer, I'm downing the religion, I'm really not, because I've also met and have been around a lot of very good Christian people. Not all of Christian people are judgmental and wrathful and evil. I mean, you just have bad apples in every bunch.
Yeah, like the God Hates Fags church.
Westboro Baptist.
Yeah.
God, I wrote an article about them back. Remember when Facebook had like the notes section or something? It was like where you could write memos or something.
I think maybe I do.
I wrote something. I think it was titled Westboro Baptist Pieces of Shit or something, because I just don't. I'm not a super religious guy, but I mean, I do also understand that to be a Christian in the sense of like New Testament Christian, you can't be a Christian and have hate in your heart.
Yeah, and they were also like hating on like the wounded warriors.
Oh, they would be at veteran veteran funerals with God hates soldiers and stuff like that.
God loves incendiary
IEDs. God loves dead soldiers and shit like. Oh yeah, they're terrible, man. But they are. Christians don't like them. That's one of those things where I feel like if you didn't know anything about Christianity and you saw them, every Christian I've ever known in my life condemns them. That doesn't represent Christianity.
Yeah. So,
I don't want people to think I'm sitting here downing your religion. I mean, we're discussing existence. Sometimes it's going to get brought up. But I don't know, like simulation theory. I mean, would God be the programmer?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
And that's another thing with simulation theory as we wrap this up, because I know we started off on one subject, now we're back to simulation theory, but I just find it so fascinating. But, are the things we're saying now, do we have free will? I mean, because scientists have done tests, and you can look them up. I hate that I don't have a source here. I know that's mighty unprofessional of me, but didn't really know where this conversation was going today, because with Eddie Van Halen dying and JP's like 4 jobs, today we were kind of just like, okay, what are we discussing today again? Right. So, forgive us for this one being all over the place, but there was like an experiment done that showed like we don't even actually have free will. There's something in your brain determines what you're going to do before you actually decide to do it, if that makes any sense. And you can look that up. There's more to that. It was a really fascinating experiment. But it's almost like the things we're saying, they're pre-programmed right now. I mean, like play Grand Theft Auto Vice City or Grand Theft Auto, any of the Grand Theft Autos past 3. There's always a radio. You can listen to different radio stations while you're driving down the road on that game. And there's always some crazy conspiracy guy. There might even be somebody, I don't know if there's anybody on the game, but it wouldn't surprise me to hear somebody going, this is all a game, man. Yeah. I'm telling you, we're all in a video game. I mean, who knows if this isn't something like that and we're just programmed to be the crazy podcaster guys questioning reality. So, like, are we even speaking with free will? Or was I,
No, I mean, it's kind of like season 3 of Westworld, I mean, or is there just algorithms that are almost predetermined,
Oh, yeah. Yep. So, who knows? Leave us your thoughts. There's a lot that we covered in this one. I mean, we went from religion to simulation to giants to DMT and methamphetamine use. So.
I'd like to do both.
No, you wouldn't. Well, I think you'd like to do DMT, but not the meth.
Meth keeps you up too long. I like my sleep.
Yeah, I mean, just stay away from it. It is
good.
Meth.
It can be good for productivity.
And kids, don't ever do drugs because we talk about them here on the podcast. I very much discourage the use of drugs. But anyways.
Well, before we go, we were giving away a comic last week.
Oh, we were, yes.
Let's see. There's only a few people who hashtagged it.
That's a great comic, by the way.
Yes, it is. Someone's going to be very lucky. I finally got my Lee Harvey Oswald variant in. I think I might have showed you. I can't remember. Well, let's see here. Bam. I landed on Jonas Balili.
Jonas Balili! Congratulations, man.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, well, we can get into that on the Patreon podcast tomorrow. Julius is flying the buttermilk as usual. But
Julius?
Yes.
In what way?
Regarding the Patreon prize packs, we sent, he was taking a bunch of stuff to UPS, trusted him with that. He was by the other day. It's still all in the back of his van. So anyway, I'm getting those out. Julius is a naughty boy, and I disciplined him with a pinky up the tush.
I didn't need to know how you punished him. You could have just left it at that, that you punished him.
It was a punishment for him, a treat for me.
All right, and speaking of Patreon, don't forget to check out our Patreon podcast. For as little as $1 a month, you get 8 extra podcasts, so not a bad deal. Now, granted, of course, $5, $10 would be magnificent because the more we can earn off of that and the more we can start, what's the word I'm looking for? The more we can, make this podcast our primary job, the more we'll be able to focus on it because we just kind of do this when we get breaks or when we have free time to do it. So, either way, and even if not, just it helps us out a ton to leave a like and a comment and even subscribe. But in the meantime, we'll catch you Thursday, patrons. Friday, we'll be back for the Walking Dead fans out there for more Walking Dead What Ifs. I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead. Do me a favor and stay weird.